So today I want to discuss the phrase that you hear all the time on YouTube as well as in written reviews on Goodreads and Amazon. Everyone always says that they provide you with an honest review of that book. It's something you hear all the time, that they received a book in exchange for an honest review. But what does that really mean? I'm here to dissect that phrase, talk about what people mean when they say it and what perhaps that actually means, and just kind of get into some of the complications that come with trying to be honest, or more specifically trying to be unbiased in those reviews. If that sounds good, let's get started. So before I get into too much trouble here, I want to start off this video by saying that I'm really not trying to call anyone out. I honestly do believe that my co-reviewers, those that live in the same book communities that I do, are for the most part, 99%, if not all of them, are interested and intending to provide honest reviews of the books that they read and receive from publishers. So I really am not looking to kind of spill the tea or call anyone out or anything like that. But what I want to talk about is the fact that when we use the phrase honest review, it's not exactly what I think people really mean it to be. So an honest review, if you just look up the word honest, simply means that they are not lying in their review. And I certainly hope and believe that everyone, again, that I interact with on the Booktube and internet of the book community are trying to be honest. I really don't think there are a lot of people trying to lie about getting a book and saying it's great when it's not. I don't think that people are outright lying. So if you're looking for a really juicy take, you're not necessarily going to get that here. But what I do want to provide in this video is a conversation between the difference between being honest in a review and being unbiased. And that is where I see reviewers and readers getting confused. Now, from what I remember, the phrase talking about an honest review, getting books in exchange from publishers, really got popularized around the time that the FTC organization in the United States really pushed influencers to make sure that they were disclosing when they received free products and make sure that they were saying that very publicly. And so in the review space of Booktube and the internet surrounding the book community, those are some of the phrases we started to use. We started to say, hey, we got this book from a publisher, from an author, but we're still providing an honest review. And I feel like everyone says that just because it's the same phrase that everyone uses, so we kind of copycat, we repeat the same phrase because it sounds good. Who doesn't want to be honest? However, my issue with all this is the fact that there's a lot more nuance when it comes to providing a review, and I really think that people need to consider their own biases. And that, again, is why disclosures are so important, is the fact that whether or not we like it, we are human, we are easily swayed by social circumstances, and so sometimes, even if we try our best, there are times that we as reviewers or readers of people can possibly be influenced or feel differently about a book because of our personal connection to the author, to the publisher, to the marketing publicist, etc. I know for myself, I have talked about in other videos that when I first was a baby booktuber many years ago, I received my first physical review copies from publishers, and I was a little bit nervous to give them poor reviews. I wanted to get more books from publishers, I wanted them to like me and all of that. And I really had to work through that in order to gain and keep my integrity as a reviewer. But I would argue that most reviewers, whether or not they choose to publicly admit to this on camera, I think most people go through that stage. Hopefully they get over it soon enough and it doesn't affect them long term. But definitely when I see someone get their very first book from a publisher and they don't like it, there's always that panic moment of thinking, what if I never get another review book again? What if the publicist hates me? What am I gonna do? And you panic. And I think a lot of people have to grow past that. And so again, that's probably where people are really talking about that honest review, of being brutally honest, even if it hurts relationships with publishers, even if you get less books and all of that. However, for those watching that aren't in the review circles, I will let you know that I'm happy to say that the major publishers and their publicists are very professional. I have never been denied future books from a publisher for giving negative reviews. I have sent some of the major publishers so many 2-star reviews, and they keep sending more books. And so really, as I understand, they really just want you to interact with the book. They want you to talk about it on camera, you know, show it on Instagram, etc. But if you choose to rip the book apart because you don't think it's good and you're going to explain why on camera or in a written review, that is your right to do so, and you should go through and actually do what you're supposed to do and review the book. So again, there's definitely the murkiness that comes with that lack of honesty, of feeling like you need to kind of sweeten up a negative review or not criticize a book too much. But the part that I really want to get into, which I think is honestly more interesting than that part, is the fact, again, that we have our own personal bias. I will be honest that I've gotten quite friendly with a couple of major publicists that are just really nice people. They ask about my family, they hope I'm doing well, and it's really hard to not want to give their books good reviews. I'm still going to be honest, but I know that even if I'm consciously trying to make a choice to be as honest as possible, my internal bias is still going to kick in at times, and I'm going to want to like their book if I possibly can. Let's make this more personal and bring this back home with a hypothetical. Let's say that my husband, who I love very dearly, were to write a book. I will be totally honest that if I were to review a book that my husband wrote on camera, I would do my best to be as honest as possible, but I would be horribly biased to like anything that they wrote because I love my husband so much. And obviously this is an extreme example because I do not love the publishers and publicists that I work with to that degree, but there definitely is layers of that. So if I was to read my husband's book, I would be looking for anything in it that I could attach to. I'd be looking for the positives. I'd be looking for things that I could praise, to build them up, to support them, to talk about and share and promote their work. And so I do think that as readers, if we get close to particularly authors, that is, I think, the biggest weakness when it comes to reviewers, is that we're in a very close, small space with authors themselves. Personally, I much prefer to review books that come from publicists and publishers because I'll be honest, while they're very friendly, I still have that professional relationship with them. But what gets tricky is when you start to interact with them on social media. I've definitely seen a lot of reviewers trending into doing more author interviews, and you get to spend time with your favorite author. You get to talk to them on Twitter and so forth. And by doing that, it really takes down the walls of professionalism. And not that you can't still maintain a level of professionalism, but you're going to be biased because, again, you're turning authors who are otherwise just these professional contacts, these other individuals, and you're turning them into casual friends, let's say. And that gets a lot harder because, again, if your friend handed you the book that they just wrote, you're probably going to want to look for things that you like about it. You're probably going to be biased even if you're not trying to be. And that ties into my next point, and that's the fact that I think that we really misconstrue whether reviews are intended to be objective or subjective. I think a lot of times as reviewers, we will exclaim that our review is objective. We will objectively look at the writing, the characters, the world building. We will go through our list of tasks and we will set aside mental ratings and reviews, comparing it to other books, and we will try to provide a very objective review of the book based off our experience, and ideally separating our emotional experience with the book from, is the book good or is it bad, regardless of how we felt about it. And so you hear people talk about this, it's been discussed on Booktube and YouTube before, where people will discuss that they do objective reviews and not subjective reviews. Well, again, I'm going to go back to the fact that we are people. So personally, I do my best to try to be fair to all the books. I try to rate and review them on a very equal scale and considering and comparing the books properly. But I'm also aware that some books are not entirely to my taste, and it's a lot easier for me to give a really positive review to a book that I like. I'm just going to be biased that way. And so I might read a book that is, again, well written with good characters and so forth, but if it's not a genre I like, if it's not a subject matter that I like, I'm not going to give it 5 stars. I'm going to be based off of my own personal reading experience, and I'm going to try to put some objective structures around that so that my review is perhaps applicable or helpful to those of you that don't necessarily share my exact reading taste. So I do try to put those guidelines in place. But if I were to tell you that my reviews are entirely objective, that I'm not including my personal opinions, feelings, my background, my life experiences, that would be completely false, because my reviews, my experience with books are completely based off my life experience. So for instance, you'll notice it when I review certain books, I will talk about certain personal aspects of the book that relate to my life, things that I've gone through. And so you'll see me swayed and say that, I really love this book, but especially because it reminded me of, my son, or this aspect of my life, or this certain topic or issue that's very close to my heart. And so of course I'm going to be biased there. And so I think we really forget when we pick up a book and we go to review it and publicly say on camera, this is an objective review, it's an honest review, we really forget where we're coming from. And the fact, again, that we are all really imperfect. We are trying our best, and I hope I don't get myself in trouble with this video. I hope I'm not taking away the integrity or trust in my reviews as I'm doing this video. I'm aware that we as people are biased to be nice to other people. It's how we're socialized, especially as women. I would say that there's an idea that we want people to like us, you want to be nice, and it's tricky to actually take apart. And when you personally know someone or have those different connections and stories around books, to try to just give a very black and white review of a book, I could argue that very few people could do it, or at least I can't. Again, I try to put as many structures in place to avoid that. but no one's perfect, and I certainly am not. Now, as a follow-up, let's talk about negative reviews, because this is something that actually came up on my personal Discord, and someone asked me about why I don't necessarily do a lot of negative reviews, and they mentioned the fact that I do publicly say that I actually DNF a lot of books that I don't love. That has more to do with the fact that life is too short, but if I get a book specifically for review from a publisher or an author, I do go out of my way to publicly review it, even if I don't like the book, even if I'm putting a negative review out there. I'm just not somebody who does rant reviews. So I want to go about this topic because of the fact that I have heard other booktubers, again, I'm not trying to call anyone out by name, people can talk about their own review policies publicly or not, but I do know that there's a lot of individuals that choose not to do negative reviews on their channels because they want to do it out of respect for the authors. And I always think, who are you writing and filming your reviews for? Are you doing it for the authors, or are you doing it for the readers? As someone who has talked about on this channel, I have a tight budget. I respect the fact that people cannot afford to buy every book, and so I would feel horribly guilty as a reviewer if I purposely recommended a book that I didn't think was that good just because I really like the author. And so I'm always really cautious about shying away from giving negative reviews, because I think that they're very important for readers, because it helps you better to select a book to ensure that you're picking up the right books for you, you're spending your money in ways that maximize your dollar and kind of give you the best bang for your buck with reading enjoyment. And so I do shy away from the concept that we can't give negative reviews because we're hurting the author, because again, I do believe, it's an old saying, I'm not the first one to say this, but I believe that authors are not the reason that we write reviews. Reviews are for the readers, and that is why it's discouraged to tag authors in reviews, because you really do not want to be speaking to them, and ideally you want to be speaking about the book as if they will never ever see your review. I honestly hope that most authors don't watch my reviews, because even in books that I absolutely love, I usually find something to criticize. I usually find something that I would say is a bit of a downfall or criticism, and very few books are those perfect 5 stars. And so I prefer for authors to not watch my videos, because again, I feel bad that they watch my reviews sometimes and see negative things about their books, but I don't want my feelings of, feeling bad for their experience to stop me from putting that out there, because again, I'm not filming this to bring hate to their books. I'm filming it so that the right reviewers and readers can find their books, and the other readers can find other things to read, quite frankly. And so that is my belief, and I really do think that negative reviews are important. I don't necessarily go out of my way to film like full-length and long-form negative rant reviews, just because it's just not my area, but I do think that those negative reviews are important. I respect those reviewers that do longer, detailed negative reviews, and you will see them sprinkled throughout my channel, because if I finish a book and I don't like it, you're gonna know about it on my channel as well. So in summary here, again, I don't think that any book reviewer that I've ever met or anyone in this book community is purposely going out of their way to be dishonest within their reviews, but I do think that a lot of us really forget to acknowledge our biases when we talk about a book. So I often hear people will say, again, I'm reviewing my best friend's book that they just put out, but don't worry, this will be an honest review. And yes, it's an honest review to the best of their ability, but if they are good friends with the person who wrote the book, they're going to be heavily, heavily biased, and they do need to make that disclaimer. And that's kind of my first point in my summary, is that you just need to make the disclaimer. It's not like you can't review a book by a good friend, by someone that you have a close personal relationship to, but I think it's important to talk about it, to say that, this is a buddy, this is someone who I talk about or talk with all the time on Discord. This is someone who is my next door neighbor. This is my cousin's book. And make sure that people are very aware of where your book is coming from. Honestly, I'm less concerned about books coming from publishers, because again, that professional relationship is there. Obviously, you want to follow the FTC guidelines and be as open as possible. But really, in my opinion, when it comes to reviewing books, the emotional connection is the thing that, in my mind, creates the most bias in those reviews. So just, not that you can't review those books, but make sure you make a disclaimer loud and clear, so that anyone reading or hearing your review knows exactly where you're coming from, and they can decide themselves how much weight to put on your opinion. The next one is perhaps a little bit controversial, but I try as best I can. I do bend this rule, but I try to create a separation between myself and the authors that I read. There are many authors that I love, and at times I've had the luck or opportunity to have one of them, chat back at me at social media and things like that and say, hey, I saw your review, very cool. But for the most part, I'm not looking to make author friends, and I don't mean that to be mean, because I have so much respect for a lot of the authors that I do work with or review their books, but I really want to keep that level of objectivity, or attempt to create that level of boundary, so that even if I love an author's work, I want to be open to the idea that I may not love their next book, and be willing to say that online, even though I know they may read my review, they may hear my review. I need to be okay with that. And so I can't be best friends with authors. I know other reviewers do that. They create close friendships, and if it works for them, great, but I can't do that without losing my integrity and becoming overly biased in my reviews. And my third summary point is to remember that reviews are for readers, not for authors. And so every time that I put out a review, either again a written review or a video here on this channel, I am purposely thinking about who is this book for, who should read it, who should avoid it, who will like it, etc. And I really try to keep my audience in mind. And if I can, I try to forget that the author exists. I try to imagine they will never ever see my video in 1,000 years. And if I knew for sure that they wouldn't see the video, that it would never get back to them, what exactly would I say on camera? If I was only concerned about making sure that my audience was not buying books and spending their time on books that were not worth their time and money, what would I honestly say in the most frank way as possible? I'll be honest, it's still a skill that I continue to work on. Sometimes my biases still seep through because, again, I'm human. Now, I'm making this video because I feel very passionate about this topic, and it's one that I kind of chat about offline with friends, but I want to make this a public conversation. I really hope that I haven't lost anyone's respect for my own reviewing practices through this, but instead, hopefully it's an acknowledgement that I see the fact that we are imperfect people, but I'm very mindful of that, and I'm always working to improve and to bring in more objective boundaries and guardrails on my reviews to make sure that my own personal bias for, hey, I like that guy, he seems like a nice fella, isn't changing my star rating, my feelings, my descriptions surrounding books. So that is what I'm working on. That is what I'd love to see other people discuss and talk about online, whether it be here or in a reply video. So if you're new to my channel and do want to stick around and subscribe, I'd love a comment down below, your opinions. Again, I don't want to call out booktubers. I'm not trying to make this like a saucy video. So let's not call people out by name. But if you want to talk about your personal opinions on honest reviews and how we keep our biases in check or not, let's do that in the comments. If you want to drop just an emoji to let me know you're here, I appreciate that. You can drop a stack of books. And if you want to subscribe, I do read a lot of horror, thriller, science fiction, fantasy. Sometimes I do these like discussion chatty videos like this. So if you want to stick around, I appreciate it. You can give this video a thumbs up, drop a comment, or hit that little notification bell so you never miss a video. Thanks so much for watching. Talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.